Hi, this is Natalie. Thank you for listening to Crossroads Church, where we are bringing a real God to real people. I believe you'll be inspired by today's message.
All right, you braved the cold. Thanks for coming out. I'm Joel, I'm the teaching guy here, and I've had the honor of serving under our senior pastor, Marcus Avalos, for the last 8 years. So yeah, it's an honor to get to speak. About 12 years ago, I had my first book. I wrote a book called Vision Map, and I really felt like the Lord had given me this book. And it got picked up by a publisher, miraculously. I was told the book was not able to be published because it was too short, but a large Christian publisher in Chicago picked it up. And I was like, man, this is a miracle. This book's coming out. I just knew the Lord was going to bless this book. The book came out, and I'm just sitting around waiting for a call from the New York Times bestseller list saying, oh, Joel, your book has just changed the whole world. Overnight, everything's changed. Well, that never happened. And I got a little disappointed, got a little frustrated, and maybe a little angry at God, because I was like, God, you gave me this book, and the book isn't selling. And I was complaining to a friend of mine about it, and he's like, you should really get some coaching on how to do this stuff. Like, how do you get books to people, and how do you reach an audience? And my first thought was like, what could a coach know that I don't know? Like, at the time, I was reading 100 books a year, right? I was listening to podcasts. Plus, I'm like the fourth smartest guy I know. So I'm like, that's a joke. It's a joke. I'm also the third humblest guy I know. But anyways, little joke. So I was like, what could he possibly know? And the guy's like, listen, hire the guy. It's $1,000 a session. I was like, what? And so somebody offered to pay it for me. He said, do everything he says in the coaching call, and if it doesn't work out, don't go back. I was like, all right, it's pretty low risk. Somebody else is paying for the call. So I got on the phone call with the guy, and he starts talking to me. He's like, here's the thing, man. The only thing holding you back is your mindset right now. You've got to believe that you're someone capable of reaching this goal of what you are trying to accomplish, but you have a mindset limitation. And I thought, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I believe in myself. I was like, the problem is I don't have any money. I don't know anybody. I live in this tiny town. I don't have anything I need to make this book go. And he's like, nope, your problem is your mindset. And then he taught me some really practical steps to get things working. And I instantly went and applied them. And literally overnight, we started making money off of what he told me to do. And I was thinking, oh, this is crazy. How's this possible? Long story short, over the next few months, I spent about $10,000 getting coaching from this guy. And he completely shifted the way I look at the whole world. Now, here's the thing I learned from this coaching thing, is this. You don't know what you don't know. $10,000 of advice. Let's close in prayer. I'm just kidding. And you're like, well, that's dumb. I know, right? But you don't know what you don't know. And so here's the challenge, right? We only know what we know. But sometimes what we know is we got it from watching our parents growing up. Sometimes what we know we got from a book. Sometimes what we know we got from TikTok, right? You only know what you know, and you're forced to face the world with what you know. But here's the thing. Sometimes there's really important things we don't know even exist. And we go, well, if they're so important, how come I don't know it? But the reality is there are entire realms and ways of looking at the world that we don't know what we don't know. And here's what I know about everybody in this room this morning. You, like me, 15 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it was, are probably facing some areas in your life where you're going, I'm doing the best I can here. I am trying. I'm doing everything I know to do, and it's not working. I'm trying to fix this marriage, and it is just not working. Man, I'm trying to rise above in my career, but it's just not working. And because I didn't get all the college degrees, or I didn't even hardly get my GED, there's only so far I can go. And there's areas of your life where you feel completely stuck dealing with your kids, and you go, I'm doing everything I know to do. I guess there's just no way out. Now, here's my point this morning, okay? We're in this series called Live Raised. And the whole point of this series is that when we come to Christ, we have to learn to die before we die so that we can live an abundant life that he has for us right now. A lot of us, we think of this salvation as fire insurance. Well, Jesus came to give me abundant life later in heaven. He says, no, and Jesus says, no. I literally said I came to give you abundant life right now. The glory, all the good things that you're waiting for in heaven, they're available to you right now, but you've got to have a shift in perspective, and you've got to begin to see the world that God sees it. And our greatest limitation, like I talked about a second ago, is ourselves and our mental blocks. So my main point this morning is this. People who have been resurrected to new life think differently. It's an adverb. You got to put ly on the end. People who have been resurrected to life think differently. If you think about it, listen, if you died and came back to life, wouldn't you kind of think like the whole world has changed? You'd go, I'm invincible. You can't stop me. You could take my life and I'm invincible. I mean, think about with Jesus. That's what, like, they tried to take him down and he came back to life in all of his power. Now he's seated at the right hand of God. When you come back to life, all of a sudden, all bets are off, the whole world has changed. And here's what Jesus is saying to you. If you'll learn to die before you physically die to what you want, die to the way things you need to be, die to the old mindsets, you can live in resurrected life right now, and you can see the world from a whole new perspective. But you've got to recognize this. You just don't know what you don't know. And this is my challenge. I'm always telling God what he's able to do in my life. And the worst part is I'm telling God what I think I'm capable of. I'm like, God, I can't do that. And he's like, you don't get to decide what you're capable of. I do. I made you. I know what's in you. You've got to get rid of that mental block. And that's what Romans is talking about. Paul's talking about to the Romans. Famous passage, you've probably read it before. He says this, therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters. That's all of us. This applies to all of us. In view of God's mercy, that grace that he gave us that we didn't deserve, he came and paid the price for us. He died for our sin. We couldn't even have done it for ourselves. He says, in view of what God's done for you, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. That means learning to die before you die so that you can live in resurrected abundant life right now. This is holy and pleasing to God when you do this. This is your true and proper worship. Worship isn't necessarily singing a song. Worship is a posture of the heart. It's giving God his worth. It's honoring what he's worth, what he's capable of doing in your life. Keep in mind that word. We're going to go back to it in a second. And then he says this, but don't conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. He says, when your mind is transformed to see the world that God sees it, you will begin to see God working in all things truly. He is accomplishing his will around the world. Now, this word transform, fascinating word. It's a Greek word, metamorpho. It's where we get our word metamorphosis. And the first time I heard the word metamorphosis was when we were talking in biology about what a caterpillar turns into. Remember that word, metamorphosis? A caterpillar goes into a cocoon and he emerges as a whole new being. And so what Paul is saying here is he's like, not only do I want you to I don't want you to be like a caterpillar that puts new glasses on. I want you to be a caterpillar that literally transforms into a whole new way of thinking and looking at the world that rises above. It makes me think of this cartoon I love. Sometimes we come to Christ and we keep our little worm mindset. Still crawling around in the world, looking at the world from a worm mindset. But God's saying, no, I want you to come into my love and be transformed. And what you're going to emerge with is a whole new view of what God is capable of and what you're capable of because the resurrected power of Christ is living in you. And what's funny about it is, a lot of times that new way of seeing the world, people are going to look at you and be like, bro, you used to be so cool. What's wrong with you? Remember when we used to go out on Friday nights and get wasted and then the next morning we all felt horrible? Wasn't that fun? You're like, no. Guys, I've seen a whole new way of living. And the danger is we could accept Christ and still be crawling around on the ground like a caterpillar when God is like, I need you to sprout wings and fly high above and see things from a whole nother perspective, which is what Paul told the Colossians when he said this. He says, if you've been raised with Christ, if you've chosen to accept his life, death, and resurrection, and you've chosen to die to yourself, then seek the things that are above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth, crawling around like a worm. For you've died. Remember, that's learning to die before you die so you can live. And your life is hidden with Christ in God. So when Christ, who is your life, appears, you also will appear with him in glory. He's saying there's great things ahead, but there's great things right now for you if you will get a transformation of your mind and begin to see the world the way God wants you to see the world. So I started thinking this week, what are some transformations we have to make? And I thought of 4 of them. There's unlimited ones, but I want to look at 4 specific ones this morning that I think we all have to make a very concerted effort to say, Lord, I need you to transform the way I see this. The first one is this, the shift in mindset from lack to abundance. Now, this is really hard if you grew up not having something you needed, right? I remember the first time I learned that I was poor was when I was in middle school, and we went through the lunch line, and all my friends had to pay $2.50 for lunch. And when I got up, the lady, she said, what's your name? And I was like, Joelle and Mom. And she goes, oh, you owe 40 cents. And I was like, how come mine's only 40 cents? And somebody's like, because you're poor, bro. It's like, I didn't know I was poor until I realized I was poor, right? And what happens is when you've had a lack or you've realized you're poor, that tends to carry over into your life. And you begin to see the world from a mindset of lack. Now listen, one of the fundamental principles of economics is there's only so much to go around. And in the mindset of lack is I better get my own because there might not be some down the road. And so you're always looking out. And Ruby K. Payne, who literally is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met, she talks about the fact that the socioeconomic status that you grew up in shapes the way that you see everything in the world. She talked about how one of the things that are valuable, if you grew up in poverty, one of the most important things is entertainment to alleviate your suffering. So you'll go to a poor person's home and they'll have a TV on every wall with all of the cable options or all of the streaming options. And it's really important to them because it's like, well, we're in misery. Why not entertain ourselves in misery? In the middle class, the important things is possession of things, having a lot of stuff, which is why you go to a middle class neighborhood and you see that they've got a boat, they've got an RV parked in the driveway if there's no HOA, and then they've got their $70,000 trucks parked out front in the street because there's no room in their garage because their garage is full of stuff. Sorry if I'm stepping on toes. But this is a sign of I've arrived, I've got all the stuff, right? And then in wealth, it's preservation of resources. So their thing is one-of-a-kind items. Like we get an art piece, an artwork that nobody else has. I'm the only one that has one of these, right? It affects the way you look at food. In poverty, the important thing is, did you get enough? So the question is always, did you get enough food? You're always heaping on the loads, right? In the middle class, it's, did it taste good? How was it? Did it taste really good? And in the upper class, it's, how was the presentation of the food? So if you've ever been to a super expensive restaurant, like $60, $70 a plate, they'll bring out this huge white plate and there's a tiny piece of steak with a little parsley on it and a little piece of asparagus and then a little drizzle of something on the top. And you're like, I'm going to starve. But it sure is beautiful. When you've got unlimited resources and wealth, you can order another plate. You're not worried about it being enough. So here's what happens, right? If you grew up in a certain socioeconomic class, Ruby Payne says this, we carry that mindset into our adult life. And what typically happens is we shift one socioeconomic class up or down in our lifetime, or you marry somebody from a different socioeconomic class. So you bring that to marriage and you look at things very differently. It can be a cause of great tension in your marriage. And what happens is if you grew up in poverty and now you start making money, but you haven't shifted your mindset because you haven't learned a different way. This is what Robert Kiyosaki in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad talks about. There are things that people in the middle and upper classes learn about money we don't learn in poverty. We have to be taught these things because more is caught than taught, okay? So I was talking about this concept and I had a lady in Houston and she came up to me in tears after I had spoken and she said, you just described my life. My husband and I, we make like $300,000 a year combined, but we are living paycheck to paycheck and barely making it. And she said, as you were talking, I remembered growing up with my dad. He would get his paycheck in cash. He'd come home. He'd take us all to Astroworld for the weekend. And we'd blow through all the money. We'd go to get all the food there. We'd get all the drinks. And he's like, and then Monday, she said, Monday, our electricity would be cut off. And we wouldn't have electricity for the week because Dad spent all the money on entertainment. And she goes, you know what? I do the same thing. She said, I'm making $300,000 a year. And she's like, I'll go to Neiman Marcus and spend $5,000, $6,000 a weekend. And then I can't make my bills. And she's like, it's ridiculous. But she brought that mindset. Even though she had money now, she brought that poverty mindset. And listen, poverty is a real thing, but poverty is also a mindset. And poverty is this mindset that I don't have enough and I'll never have enough. So I might as well just eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow I die. There's no thought for savings. no thought for the future. And again, you don't realize, you just don't know what you don't know. You think you know it. You're like, well, this is how I grew up. This is how everybody around me grew up. But there's whole other ways of thinking of things. And if we're not careful, we carry that poverty mindset. And God says, look, this is what God says. He says, look, I'm going to meet all your needs according to my riches and glory in Christ Jesus. Here's another one. It says, he's able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine according to his power that is worked within us. Now, abundance is more than just a mindset about money. Abundance is a mindset about everything. It causes you to be open-handed, saying, you know what, I've got enough. There's enough to go around. God will provide for me, and I'm going to keep my hands open so I can give to others as he provides for me. I'm going to hold everything loosely. But God's got all I need. And I can't tell you how many people I've worked with in my coaching program, multimillionaires, who when I talk to them, they are deathly afraid of poverty. I say, well, how much is going to be enough, man? They're like, there's never enough. I'm going to work till I die because there will never be enough. I go, wow, that dies hard. When you've grown up in poverty or lack, even when you have the resources, if you've made that your God, if money is your promise of safety, your promise of freedom, your promise of control, and you've made that your God, first of all, it's going to be a horrible taskmaster. You will become a slave to it. And also, you're going to be greedy and hold on to things. And that's why I'm saying this. Poverty is a mindset in many ways. I've met a lot of rich people who are some of the most generous people I've met, but money doesn't hold them. And I've met a lot of poor people who are some of the most greedy people I've met because of a mindset. And God says, I need you to be open-minded, recognizing I'm the one that's going to provide for you. I'm the one that's going to have resources. That's one of them, right? Here's another one. From safety to vulnerability. Guys, nowhere in the Bible does it say blessed are the safe, for they shall know. Safety is not a virtue in God's kingdom, because our safety is supposed to be found in God. Vulnerability is. It says this, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. It seems to be that God pours a blessing out of those who are in a position of vulnerability. And you can put yourself in that position of vulnerability even if you have the resources, but it's a mindset of the heart. It's a mindset up here where you go, God, I'm going to be the one, I'm going to trust you're the one who's my safety. And listen, I saw this exemplified from me with my father. When I was 11 years old, he felt like God was calling us to move to a war-torn country in Central America. It was in the middle of a civil war. And he felt like God was calling us to move there right in the middle of that. And it was really a bad time for a young family. And the worst part about it was my mom was having some major anxiety issues, like to the point that she was about to be checked into an institution for it. I remember asking my dad one time, Dad, is mom gonna die? And he's like, no, she's not gonna die. She's just got some challenges she's facing with. Right in the middle of that, God said, move your family to Guatemala. And Dad sought a lot of counsel because it's not generally wise to take somebody who has anxiety into a place where they're blowing up stuff. I'll tell you this though, we moved down there and God healed my mother. But if he would have held on to safety, well, that's not the safest place. And listen, there's wisdom, but he sought counsel. We moved down there and God did exceedingly abundantly, far above all we could ever ask or think. But we were in a vulnerable position down there. And we recognized that our safety comes from God. And I had that modeled for me. And you may have never had that modeled for you. Maybe you had modeled for you, be safe. And listen, it's important to be wise. But God will oftentimes call you to do things that don't feel safe. And it's right in the middle of that. He says, I want you to find your safety in the shadow of my wing, as the Bible verse says, and step out, and I'm going to take care of you. Money is not your source for safety. Connections are not your source for safety. The safety you're looking for is only found in me. When you put yourself in a vulnerable position, you say, God, I'm trusting you here. I'll never forget going back to the money thing with this, tied in with this. When we were missionaries, we lived off of income and support. People would give to us monthly. That was our sole source of income. And I remember every month I'd be panicked and freaking out about whether we were gonna have enough money to live. And one day my wife told me, she's like, you gotta get over this. You're driving me crazy. And I remember going to God. I'll never forget the room I was in. In the room, I dropped to my knees and I was like, God, I'm gonna stop worrying about money for my safety, for my provision. I'm gonna stop, but please take care of me. And I'll tell you this, 99.9% of the time, I don't worry about money anymore. And he's always provided. But man, it's scary. Position of vulnerability, right? The next one. This is one I've really got down. Just kidding, I don't. Pride. A shift from pride to humility. Listen to me. Pride is everywhere, y'all. Pride is so prevalent. I see it. I had a thing this week where I was doing something and I was like, oh my gosh, I am so stinking proud. And pride is tricky. Sometimes the people who seem the most humble are actually the most proud. I'll never forget. I worked for years. I hired a homeless guy to do some work for us. He did great work. But I would have these conversations with him. This guy's homeless, right? He was the most arrogant person I've ever met. He would always tell me, he's like, I'm better than you. You're living in the illusion, man. I'm like, bro, you live in a van down by the river. Like, he was so arrogant. He'd be like, all you people, he's like, you don't even know. He's like, I know the stuff. You know, he'd listen to these weird conspiracy shows and he'd be like, you don't know anything. And I was like, how wild that a guy who literally seems to have hit rock bottom in life has so much arrogance. And it's so easy for it to slip in. I'll be honest, some of the most arrogant people I've met are blue collar workers who listen to podcasts all day. They're like, I know stuff, man. I know stuff, and all you losers, like I can work with my hands. You're not as tough as me, right? Pride sneaks in everywhere. It's not just sneak in with white collar guys, it sneaks in with blue collar guys. Pride is everywhere, and we've got to kill it. That's why James says this, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will exalt you. There's another verse that actually says, God resists the proud. Pride is so dangerous. I was talking to a guy this week. He was complaining about the church. And he's like, man, all the church is full of these hypocrites. I was like, what do you mean hypocrites? He's like, they all go and act like they like it. I don't even pretend to act like I like it. I'm like, what a weird thing to say. And I'm like, you think you're better than them, don't you? And he's like, well, kind of like that homeless guy. They're all living in this fake world and they're just lying to themselves. And I'm like, really? I said, are you serving anywhere? Like, no. He's like, I just read my Bible and it's me and Jesus. And I'm like, what an arrogant mindset. Because if you're always just consuming and never pouring out to others, you're always gonna think you're better than them. But when you start pouring out to others and hearing their story, all of a sudden you go, wow, they've got the same problems I do. And we're all in desperate need here when we gather together. And yeah, some of us, we're not living the way we should, but we know that we're in desperate need of a Savior. And that's what we're doing here under this roof. We're all coming together. Some of us are hypocrites, but that's all right. What better place for a hypocrite than in church? We got to get over the arrogance. And I'm telling you, man, it sneaks in everywhere. God's always convicted me of my pride because I got a real problem with it, right? Takes one to know one. I can spot it in other guys. I'm like, you're an arrogant son of a gun. You know how I know? Because I am too, right? Here's the last one that I want to talk about. We have to shift from deception to truth. Guys, lies are everywhere in this world and everyone lies. But not me. Lie, self-deception. You know, one of the biggest ways we lie is trying to present ourselves in a certain way to the world to make ourselves look better than we actually are. This is where social media is so dangerous. We can present an image to the world. One of the things I've noticed, call me cynical, but I do a lot of coaching and counseling, and people tell me their stuff is, I see a lot of people that start posting about how great their husband is, or that we're on a cruise together, we're in love. And the more they post about how great their husband or wife is, the more I'm like, wow, their marriage must be really struggling. And invariably, 6 months later, they'll be like, we're getting a divorce. I'm like, what in the world? You made it look like you guys had this perfect marriage. Well, we went on the cruise to try and save our marriage. And here's where the deception really comes in. A lot of the times, the easiest person to deceive is yourself. If I can just say it loud enough and ignore the problems. I read this fascinating Stanford study a couple of weeks ago. It was so fascinating because it says the number one things that hinders people from reaching their goals is their unwillingness to confront small problems that are uncomfortable along the way. And so small problems build up and you go, well, that's not really a problem. You lie to yourself. That's not really a problem. That's not really a problem. And little by little, it's like the guy that somebody asked him, how did you go bankrupt? And he goes, well, it was gradually, and then it was suddenly. How did this problem happen? Well, I ignored a thing here. I did that. I ignored a thing there, and it slowly, rather than confront it, rather than deal with the truth of the situation, I lied to myself and said, this isn't a big deal, okay? One of the things I've vowed to myself is I'm gonna always have the hard conversations, even if I look bad or even if it makes people feel awkward. And a lot of people don't like me because of that. Ask the worship team. Sometimes the worship team will be like, what'd you think of that song? I'm like, guys, you really bombed on that one. And they're like, oh. But here's the thing. When you're honest about stuff, and listen, some things just don't need to be said, but some things need to be said if you need to fix things, right? Takes wisdom, right? Sometimes I've spoken up and you're like, should have just kept your mouth shut. But if somebody asks, it's better to tell the truth than to lie, because here's the thing. They may not like it at first, but they'll begin to know they can trust you. I don't give compliments unless I really mean them. A lot of times we give compliments trying to ingratiate ourselves with others, and we're just, again, it's deception. It's all trying to make ourselves look better or get people to like us. And truth is the most important thing, right? I love this verse in Colossians. It says, don't lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices and put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its creator. Truth is what will set us free. Now, the truth usually makes us uncomfortable at first. But when we're willing to look at the truth, it will ultimately set us free. Look at the truth of things aren't what they should be, and don't lie to yourself. I call it toxic positivity. I talk to people like, we're gonna be able to do this. And I'm like, that's not gonna work well. I've seen this, and this lead up to there. Oh no, you're just being so negative. I'm like, no, you're being toxically positive. Be honest about the situation. Things are sinking here, okay? Be honest and truthful. And what's fascinating is you go, well, how do I make these shifts? Like, God, I wanna do this, right? It's gonna be something that he gives you the power to do. And what's really cool is, as I was researching, I was like, how do you do this? I started looking at neuroscience. Like, what are the keys to shifting your mindset, right? Because there's literally physical elements to how you shift your mindset. And what they came up with, what neuroscience has concluded in many ways, is fascinating. It doesn't surprise me, because all truth comes from God. All truth is God's truth. If it's true, it's from God, okay? Every ology is a branch of theology. Psychology, sociology, biology, all comes from God's truth. He has spoken the truth. And what neuroscience has shown is gratitude is the key to opening up your world to a bigger way of thinking. And what's really cool is, if you read this passage we just read in Colossians, if you keep reading, Paul literally goes into that. He says this, let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts as you're trusting God to be your provision, as you're choosing to humble yourself, as you're choosing to walk in a vulnerable position, trusting him for your safety, as you're choosing to speak the truth, no matter what it's gonna cost you. Let that peace rule in your heart, since as members of one body, you were called to peace. And and this is the key, he says, and be thankful. Gratitude, right there, he says it. That's the key to opening up your world to a greater way of thinking. Let the message of Christ dwell among you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom. That's what we're doing here. Through this teaching, we're hopefully opening our minds to the possibilities that God has for us that we can't even see for ourselves. Through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. What is he saying? Through worship. There's that very same thing again. Through giving God his word, saying, God, you know what I'm capable of. You know what you're capable of, and I don't even know. So I'm gonna trust you, and I'm gonna trust that you're gonna free my mind as I'm grateful for what you've given me. And it says, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. Guys, the highest form of thought, as my friend, I wish, he's my favorite author. I think of him as my friend. I read everything he's written. G.K. Chesterton, he says, I would maintain that thanks are the highest form of thought, and that gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder. If you want to blow your perspective wider and stop looking at the world like a caterpillar and instead start soaring above, it starts with gratitude. Every morning, God, I thank you for this house. Sure, it's not the exact house I want. Wish it was a little bit different. Man, I got a place to get out of the cold. God, I thank you for my husband. How many people would love to have a husband? God, I thank you for my wife. God, I thank you for my kids. They drive me crazy, but I'm so grateful for them. God, I thank you that you've provided. I thank you for my job. You start with gratitude, and all of a sudden your world begins to open up. The blinders come off, and you begin to see the world in God's kingdom is full of possibilities, y'all. It's a wide open field. I asked a preacher once, and he said that it's a wide open field in the kingdom. And I was like, wide open field? I thought he said it was a gate and the road was narrow to get to eternal life. And he goes, it is. There's only one way in, it's through Jesus. But once you get in the door, he's like, hey man, Run and play, the whole field is yours. The world is full of unlimited possibilities if you'll free your mind and begin to see. And this is real stuff for me, guys. This isn't just theory. I've been feeling a little stuck myself in some areas of my life the last few weeks. And the other day I was praying, and I literally felt like I had this idea come to mind, and I immediately thought, I can't do that because, and I felt this conviction in my heart. I'm like, who am I to say what I can't do? Only God gets to decide that. I've got to open my mind up and go, all right, apparently through him, the same spirit that raised Christ Jesus from the dead lives inside of me. I can do anything through him. And I'm not going to say I can't do that immediately. I'm going to say, okay, God, let it be done through me. The essence of surrender, getting out of God's way so he can do in us what he wants to do through us. And that's my prayer for all of us. And this is what the world needs right now, y'all. We need people who are thinking on a higher plane, We're not dealing with the things of this world and getting stuck like caterpillars and worms thinking in that way. We're flying above going, there's way bigger things out there. And we're telling a better story to the world of what God is able to do through our lives when we're surrendered to him. You guys receive that? Let me pray for you. Lord, we thank you that you've given us everything we need for life and godliness. You've provided everything we need and we can walk in that. So I pray for, those mental blocks we've had saying, we can't do that. I could never do that. God couldn't do that. Lord, I pray that we would just have those blown away through gratitude and thanksgiving and worship. Every day we'd start the day going, man, the world is full of possibility because God has conquered death. And those people who have come back to life, they think real differently. So I thank you that we can walk in that.